So, I've got to be honest, I've been sitting on this project for a while. About 2 months ago, I was in an antique shop, and I found myself a pretty good nick leg vise, or standing vise, or blacksmith vise, whatever you want to call it. These generally retail, now, for a proper one, you're looking about 70-80 quid, depending obviously on the jaw size. I picked this one up for 40, because thankfully the guy in the shop didn't have a clue what it was. So I got quite lucky there. So what I'm planning on doing is making like a floor vise. So I'm going to chop the bottom leg so it's quite short and have it like freestanding. What I've done is I've bought some box section, which is 50 mil by 50 mil, and then 5 mil walls. So it's, you know, strong as anything. And then over here, I have bought a nice thick piece of plate. So we got 423 mil across, 219 mil wide, and it's 12 mil thick. So that will be able to take some pretty hefty punishment, I would hope. So the plan will be to cut in an insert for the vise to sit in, and then obviously weld 3 legs to the bottom, and then I'm just waiting on another small piece of steel to arrive, just to sort of give the leg something to bolt onto, and that can be bolted into the floor. So no blacksmithing so much, but lots of welding and cutting. I think step 1 of this project is going to be cleaning up the actual vise itself before I measure up a hole for the plate. Plate obviously, the insert's going to come up to around here, sort of midway through the vise. I'll keep one side long, so that if I put long pieces through, I'll have something to stop on, and I'll leave one side short, so when it comes up there, so that obviously longer pieces can thread all the way through to the ground. And then obviously this section here is what bolts onto the plate. I haven't done any measuring yet, so I'm just going to do it as I go, figure out what's needed. So yeah, step 1, probably going to go over this with a wire brush and try and get rid of some of the rust and crap that's accumulated over the years. I'm afraid for any enthusiasts out there, I haven't got any information about this at the moment, but looking at it, I mean, the exterior looks like it's been pretty heavily used. However, the corkscrew on it is immaculate. So whoever did hone it last appears to have kept it in pretty good shape. I'll disassemble it and we'll have a proper look. As best I can anyway, I don't really know what I'm doing. Here we are, with all the parts laid out. I've gone away, and I've done a little research, and I've looked up the names of each part, which should hopefully display now. There we go. I've done my best to label it all. I think it's right. So if we start off with the jaws, fairly self-explanatory, both jaws there at the top. Coming down you have the screw eye, of which you have one on either side, through which goes the screw thread shaft, connected to the spindle, and with the sliding handle shaft. With me so far. You've got this thrust washer which goes in between the screw thread shaft and the screw eye, which is basically just a giant washer, just to obviously stop it unthreading itself. That goes all the way through and connects to the solid screw box. So that's your basic mechanism for opening and closing the jaws. You've then got the spring bracket, which is what holds the spring in place, the bottom of the arm here to the top there, and that's what provides the you know, the want for the jaws to spring open. Around here you have the mounting bracket, which also connects to the spring bracket. So obviously we've got the spring being held in place, that then holds onto the mounting bracket, and that's locked in with the locking wedge and the keyed wedge, which is probably what you saw me hammering out. This literally has this sort of gap in, hence the name, keyed, and then you push this one through, which is obviously narrower at this side, wider at this side, and that holds it in place. Going down the legs, you've got the pivot bracket and the pivot standoff flange. Again, relatively self-explanatory, one fits into the other, with the pivot bolt, and that just literally comes with a little washer and just a pin just to pin it through. I might end up replacing this part. I don't know how strong that's going to be, but to be fair, it doesn't really need to be. This is what bears the brunt of the load. And then finally, and probably most obviously, we've got the leg, or the post. And that is everything I could find on the parts. There's lots of different vices, lots of different types, so different ones have different parts, but this is what I could identify as mine. Right, time to start cleaning. There we go, spot the difference. Obviously one side has been gone over with the wire brush, got rid of most of the rust and all the crud. The other side, not so much. However, I think I'm going to need a new wire brush, because, yeah, that one's been fairly well used. Whenever you use one of these, for exactly this reason, you need to wear safety goggles, because it sends these little bits of steel out at Mach 1, and it'll penetrate anything they come into contact with. So, yeah, it's quite important to protect your eyes. You know, these are leather shoes, and that's stuck well in. As it turns out, the wire knot brush is a lot better for this anyway. We've now finished this piece. I've half done the spring, you can see, that side nice and sheen, and that one not. We've then got to obviously do the other half, so we're about halfway. It's taken quite a long time. I'm literally having to do this bit by bit, just because my back is killing me from all the hunching over. But unfortunately my work table's absolutely rubbish, so this is really the best way I've got to do it. Just got to make do. So having cleaned this bolt, what's immediately become apparent is that it's obviously now got a thread. When it was covered in rust and dirt, I thought it was a solid piece of bar with just a hole drilled through. But this obviously used to be a threaded bolt. So rather than sticking with the hole, what I might try doing is actually dyeing it again and seeing if I can re-thread it. If I can, I might just then be able to buy a bolt, which would obviously make it more secure. So we'll see. Never mind, scrap that idea. The largest dye I've got is 12mm. So unfortunately, this is around 16 to 18. So no go. I could buy a new bolt, but I quite like how this looks, so I'm not sure if I'm going to do that or not. I'll see how it works once I put it all back together. That humbling moment when you suddenly realise just how lucky you are to still be a man. That could have gone wrong, and I would have been very cross. Well, that was exhausting, but that is now all done. The only parts I'm going to leave dirty are the two wedges, because I figure the rust will actually help keep them in, rather than if I ground them smooth and oiled them. So they'll stay as they are, but the rest of it, I mean, you can see the difference. How clean that looks now, how much better. I'm going to apply some rust converter to all of this, and then I just need to grease them, and also grease the corkscrew, and then that'll be done. So here's the before, and here's the after. Much, much better. It's interesting now that it's clean, you can actually see just how much this has been used, but all the damage is just superficial. It's in extremely good nick, and it works perfectly. So I need to still rust convert and grease, and then it will be a case of chopping the leg off. As you can see, I haven't even bothered to clean this part up. I'm going to be chopping it off about there, and then it'll be a case of making the frame for it. But that took a very long time. It was filthy, filthy, filthy vice. Talking earlier about how rubbish my table was. It didn't survive the bench vice's weight. It does weigh a ton, but Just goes to show. Piece of crap. Have a look at this. This was a knotted wire wheel, just been worn down to stumps. Second one I've used. All that gone into that. Ridiculous. There we go. I've just oiled it for today. End now cut off as well. That's all I'm going to do for now. I'm going to leave it there. I'll do the stand and the legs when I get a chance, really. Well, that's the first half of the rust converter done. Looks very messy, but apparently that will clear up on its own. So I'll wait an hour for that to dry and then I'll do the other side. There we go. Second half done. Turns this weird purple colour. But apparently when it's done it should turn completely black. And then it should be relatively protected. So, just got to wait and see. Last little bit is just to do the handle. Well, it's the next morning. And yeah, that seems to have worked. Happy days. Pretty pleased with that. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life, and this is what I've measured out. This is obviously going to be the section that the back leg is going through, which is 6.5 by about 5, roughly, centimetres. I'm going to leave this one long, like I said, so I can use that as a stop for shorter items, and I'm going to leave this part off so that I can thread longer things through all the way to the floor. So this whole hashed area is going to be what's being cut out. Then I've got to work out the legs, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. There we are, there's the section now cut out. I managed to get most of it with the angle grinder, scored it along here and was able to break it off with the hammer. The only part I couldn't get was the little corner, so I've just gone over that with a file and now we've got nice, relatively sharp corners in there. Certainly enough for what I need anyway. I haven't tried fitting this up yet, so let's give that a try and see how that goes. Please, 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 please fit. Oh, that's not bad. That seems to go pretty alright. Obviously need to secure it, but yeah, that's not bad at all. Take that and run, I think. Seem to have cut it a little bit on the big side though, which is bizarre. Must have got my measurements slightly wrong. Never mind. So don't ask me how I managed it, but on checking the fitting again, I'd somehow managed to cut about 3mm extra either side. So all I've done is I've just welded some little strips of metal which are each 3mm, and I'm going to be grinding them back. Look at those amazing welds. God, I'm good at this. And hopefully that should just fill up that little gap. It doesn't need to be particularly close, but just so long as it's enough to sort of make it slightly more snug. That's all I'm aiming for, really. There we go. Those two little plates now welded in place. Not perfect, but good enough for the job. So we'll give that another try, we'll give that another fit up and see how that goes. There we go. Voice obviously upside down. As you can see, that now fits nice and snugly. I've drilled the first pilot hole, which as you can see, runs nicely all the way through. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure out the actual hole of the, this section here. I need to go and buy the right size drill bit to drill through and the right size bolt. So yeah, the first thing I'll do is I'll secure this one in place so that it's not going anywhere, and then I can drill the next two so I can get an idea where they need to go. So here's something interesting. Using my pair of calipers to measure the inside width of the screw, or the hole, sorry. Each one is a different size. So you see here, first one 11mm, next one 12mm, last one 13mm. So I think the best thing to do will be to buy either a 13 or a 12, and I need to re-drill each of these. I don't mind if one of them's a little bit on the loose side, but obviously I can't have an 11mm going in a 13mm because that would just mean it's going to wobble loads. I don't want that, so I'm going to have to re-drill these. Right, I've re-drilled the holes and I've ground this down so it should fit. I've also re-drilled this hole. Let's see how we're looking and how we line up. That looks hopeful. Let's give it a quick try with a... Just bought some M12 bolts, so we'll see how that fits. Hopefully, without problem. Just like that. Beautiful. And that, certainly left and right is solid, and then once those two are in, that won't wobble either. So now, using a little automatic punch, or centre punch, I'm just going to mark out where these next two need to go, which is easier said than done. Out there. One. And... about there. There we go. So we're going to do the same again. Initially, just do a little pilot hole with a 7mm bit, and then we will, once we've got that sorted, we'll drill it through with a 12mm. Right, here we go. One triple drilled 12mm piece of thing. Let's see, hopefully it fits and they line up. So far, looking relatively hopeful. I deliberately drilled this first one slightly to the side just to give it a tighter fit, so that one probably needs hammering. I'm not sure whether the next two will, but we'll see. Hopefully, they just fit like a glove. That one's fine. This last one needs a bit of help, but then it's not quite. Hang on. There we go. And that one will probably now fit tighter as well. A bit. Alright, let's get some washers on them and then bolt them on. There we go. That is about as solid as I can get it. Now bolted in place. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. Right, there we go. First part of the stand done. It's the right shape, again, so you've got the nice section coming down here so I can mount things through all the way to the floor, and I've got the stop on the other side. It's bolted firmly and it doesn't wobble at all. The whole thing weighs a bleeding ton, and now I have to take it back to pieces so that I can work on the stand and the legs, because this thing is way too heavy to try and manoeuvre around. So, yep, that'll be next. Just before I disassemble it, this other piece of steel arrived the other day. I'm just working out whereabouts I need to have the foot placed. I reckon about here, because what I want is I want the legs coming down from each corner, and I want them coming slightly forward and outwards, so that, you know, the whole vise isn't sort of top heavy this way. So I figure if I had the legs coming down at that sort of angle to the edge, I reckon that should be about right. What I probably will have to do though is elongate this. So I think I'm going to do like a letter T, so I'm going to cut kind of across here with a bit through the middle. So I'll have these two sides spare, and I can use that to elongate the tail out, and then that should provide that last sort of angled leg. That's the plan. Best made plans and all that. We'll see what happens. There we go. I've worked out the rough shape of my letter T. I'm going to use these bits on the side, like I say, to extend the middle down to probably another half foot to a foot or so. I'm going to be using my little jigsaw here. I figure that's going to be the quickest and easiest way rather than trying to angle grind it all. So we're just going to crack on with that. Done. There we go. That's now got the end section welded on. Last step there will just be to tidy this up a bit, just give it a grind and get it flat. And then that is my base done. Just like that. One solid piece. Sorted. Right. Legs. Metal. Now, this part is the part I've been worried about since I started this project. I've got no idea how I'm going to measure up these legs. What I've done is I've measured the leg of the vice from here to the end, and that was just under 21 inches. So I figured with the angle and the part I'm going to have to cut off, I'd give myself 1.5 inches to play with. So I've cut each of these legs at 22. The trouble is they're not all going to be the same size. 2 of them will be pretty much the same size. One of them's going to be a little bit shorter because I'm going to have one leg at the back, obviously, and one leg here. Those are going to be the 2 that are the same size because I want this part supported. This one is obviously going to be shorter because it's going to be originating from there. And I'm not clever enough, and I'm not good enough at maths to figure out how to do that exactly. So I'm going to do it my way, which is basically wing it. Just go by how it looks, and basically spirit levels and basic tools. That's the only plan I've got for this. I don't expect this to be perfect, but hopefully I can make it work. Well, so far it's not going too badly. What I've done, I've cut the legs, the angles on the legs, and I've welded each of those to the base. As you can see here, it's just balancing on top at the moment. There's no welds or anything, it's just balanced. And you can also see it's at a bit of a jaunty angle. That's because obviously I haven't cut them down to the right length yet. But I just wanted to see roughly if, you know, I've got the legs in the right place, because you think as these get lower, they're also going to come forward more. So, you know, this part here is going to be almost in line with there. Likewise on the other side. Actually, that one's slipped back a bit, but you know, that'll be about there. And again, as it cuts down to yay, should be pretty much in line. Give or take. It'll be better than it was anyway, a little bit more secure. That rear leg, again, you can see it's currently in the bolt, so I'm going to have to trim that right back. But you can see how far I've got to cut off by how high up it is. It's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches up. But I just kind of wanted to see if it's, you know, like I say, if they're roughly in the right place. And it doesn't look too bad. It's getting there anyway. Okay, we're really making progress now. As you can see, it's all now pretty much level. There's still a few gaps that I need to fill, like there's a big one, so I'll probably put some extra stock in there. But it's level, it's central. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put some rebar in between each of the struts to hold them in place. I need to fill each of the legs with sand, and then I need to weld the top on. And then last bit will be to give it another coat of the rust converter, and that should be done, I think. Right then, I've got the legs in the position I want them. I put these 2 crossbars through, and I will have a third one going across. I did actually put it on before realising that I still need to remove the vice again, so I'll have to put that in after I've put the vice in place. Last step is to fill the legs with sand. Luckily I still have this big bag of play sand left over from when I did the refractory cement for my forge. So that's going to be what we're doing now. There we go, legs all filled up with sand, making the base nice and heavy. Last thing to do now will be to put the vice back on. I've tightened up all these bolts so they're as tight as I can get them now. That middle one, or that bottom one, is going to be going inside the leg here, so I've had to leave a little bit of extra room. I've left it just on all 3, just because. And then yeah, it's going to be a case of putting in this last little arm here, and then welding the top on. Cool. Well, the vice is now in place, and I've begun the welding. However, I've run out of time today. I'm going out with some mates, so I've fallen or failed at the final hurdle. But it's so close to being finished. Tomorrow. Finish it tomorrow. Tell you what, even though it's not finished yet, I've got to admit, it looks pretty good just sat in the corner there. Getting a nice little collection of blacksmithing things going here. Now don't get me wrong, I completely hold my hands up to the fact that I am a bad welder, but that, especially by my standards, is not too bad. Maybe that one's a bit messy. Actually, that's mostly crap left over. But I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think it's going to go anywhere anyway. I put plenty of layers on it, so... Sorry, just admiring my handiwork. I'm sure there are people watching this who are like, that's terrible, but trust me, by my standards, I'm very pleased. Right, let's flip this back over. I think we're pretty much done. Just got to give it a lick of paint. There we go. There it is with the first coating of the rust converter. I don't think this is going to go as black, but it will just make it match that little bit more. It doesn't look bad. Funnily enough, the legs have gone quite black, but the top plate and the bottom plate in particular have barely changed at all. But it does need a bit longer, so I'll give that an hour to dry. Then I'll come and give it a second paint, but otherwise we're all done. And I think that's come out pretty well. There she is, all done. She's now had 2 coats of the rust converter, and she's pretty much matching now. But yep, that is finished, and functional, and strong, and level, and straight. I'm very pleased with this. I think this has come out really well. Considering when you look back at the start of the video and you see, you know, what we started with, and you see what we're up to now, that's a pretty marked improvement, really. So yeah, that will be used in the future. I'll end the video here.